Okay, today my guest is Kevin Van Eck with At Properties, Christie's International Real Estate here in Chicago. Let me tell you more about Kevin. As Executive Vice President of Innovation for Christie's International Real Estate, Kevin plays a central role in developing and implementing a range of programs to drive growth and success among network affiliates and agents. These include technology, agent performance, recruitment, retention, and third party partnerships. Kevin's experience as an agent, managing broker, and agent performance coach, and his role in developing brokerage technology gives him a unique perspective that few in the industry have. A native Chicagoan, Kevin graduated from the University of Illinois, is an Army veteran, and a world traveler. Please learn more about the brands that Kevin represents, which is At Properties as well as Christie's International. To learn more, at properties.com and Christie's Real Estate, christiesrealestate.com. Both links to those will be in the show notes. Kevin, welcome to the show.
Hi, DJ. Thanks so much for having me.
I'm so excited to have you on. I was just at a meeting down at the Chicago Association of Realtors for this committee I'm on, and your name, believe it or not, came up. This is not a surprise, as you are very well regarded and respected here in the Chicagoland area. But you now, represent a brand that has moved beyond just the Chicagoland area, which is really truly impressive. So I'd love to. Well, before we get to that, I want to learn about your journey. So tell me a little bit about how you got into real estate, why you got into real estate, and how you got to where you are today.
Sure. And going back to what you started with, I served at the Chicago Association of Realtors for a long time. So they have a very special place in my heart. So that made me really smile when you said that. So thank you. That's very kind. Um, I think when I got into real estate, it wasn't planned. It's really interesting. I've had sort of a career where I've hopped around quite a bit between different industries. Like you mentioned, I served in the Army. I was a paramedic. I wanted to be a trauma surgeon. And right before real estate, I was in restaurant franchising. And it was right
Very
before the
different from
downturn.
being a trauma surgeon.
It's funny the path that we all take, because I don't think anyone ends up where they had predicted if you ask them at 18, right?
Right.
So for me, it was the beginning of the downturn, and the restaurant group that I was working with, they were starting to feel it. They were based out of California, and the downturn was impacting quite a bit. And I had a friend at the time who was in real estate and said, maybe you try it. I thought my first reaction as the market is crashing is probably not the smartest time to get in. And then I thought about it. And I thought about how, during that market would be the time to grab market share and to actually grow a business, because there were so many agents getting out of the business. And I saw an opportunity, and I was nervous, as anyone would be. I was prepared financially, but jumped into real estate, and I didn't. It was interesting. I didn't know what I was doing, like most of us when we first get into real estate, and I had to learn very quickly, especially because of what was happening in the market at that time.
Yeah, it's interesting. I started as a financial advisor in 2001 after that crash of the financial or of the tech market in particular, and the stock market, and of course the events of 9/11. And in some ways, it was the best time to get started because people were exiting the business. They had been burned by their financial advisors previously, who had put a lot of their assets into the technology. And so in some ways, it was both the hardest time to get started, but also a really fortuitous time. And I imagine you probably feel the same way when you got into real estate.
Agreed. I think it was, I didn't know the good times, or what people call the, 2000, early 2000s, when it was almost, I call it the Disney World of real estate.
Yeah.
And I didn't know that. So all I knew to do was, from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. or longer, work, connect, prospect. And it's funny because I didn't learn, I didn't have a lot of mentorship, and I could share more about that, but I didn't have anyone really teaching me the ropes. So I learned, you probably remember this, DJ, and a website called Active Rain. And it was one of
Sure.
the first real estate blog sites. And they told agents just to write cards, go out to lunch, dinner, breakfast, drinks, and just see your people. And that's exactly what I did. And that's really what launched my career at the time.
Yeah, it's amazing that those same principles of meet as many people as you can, connect with them, interact with them, have some sort of communication strategy so that you're sending something to them of value every so often, or having conversations of value, is really sort of the discipline that even still works just as much today as it did then.
That's right. It's the basics, right? Going back to the basics. And because it's always been a relationship industry. And I don't think, you and I are both very involved in tech and trying new things. But that still hasn't replaced that one to one, that communication relationship, face to face that we have with our clients and other agents and colleagues in the industry too. I don't think it's, there's been a lot of talk over the years, and especially now with AI, about agents being replaced, but nothing replaces that relationship.
Yeah, let's talk about AI. This actually came up in my committee meeting this morning. We were sort of laughing about one of our committee members is of the belief that in 10 years realtors won't be needed. This is a realtor, and he says AI is taking over. This is what's going to happen, and it was a very interesting perspective. And I don't know that he's totally wrong. I hope that he's wrong, but I don't know. I know that as technology has sort of gotten past the year 2000, we've been hearing that almost every single iteration of any new technologies. This is going to replace realtors.
Right.
Even going back to pre Zillow days, there was sort of this talk of like, oh, people are just going to look for homes online exclusively, not really need a broker anymore, because realtors used to be the gateway to homes. They're not really the gatekeeper anymore, because anyone who has access to the internet can search basically the MLS without a realtor, and still, but the realtor is as needed. I met with I have a friend who is on the board of well, actually I shouldn't say where, but a big financial services firm, and he had said 12 years ago to me, you guys are going to be out of business, as realtors will be out of business in 10 years. And this is a guy who knows things. And he was like, you got to find a new line of work because it's over for you guys. He was in the tech space. Turns out he was wrong. He was right about a lot of other things, but wrong about that. And thank goodness. Do you think AI is threatening to realtors?
I think, it's hard to say in the long term, right? But things are moving so quickly. If you asked anyone 6 months ago what Chat GPT was,
Right.
who it wasn't on the common person's radar, right? So I think now, but look how quickly a lot of agents and brokerages and tech companies have adopted open source AI. It's wild. So in the short term, though, I don't think we're threatened by AI, but I think the perspective we have to have is that it is competition. It is competition with us, where we have to raise the bar and understand what we need to do to create great experiences, and to be able to, in competing with AI, be able to guide consumers based on the non-tangibles that they share with us. So I think, because AI right now, it's very technical, it's glitchy, all of that. But I do think, from a data and stats standpoint, it could be something, but we need to put it to use, and we need to make sure that, I talk a lot about experience and consumer experience. The AI can't create a consumer experience like you can.
Yeah, the only way I see AI actually replacing the role of a realtor, which in my mind, and there's a lot that realtors do, obviously, and this is going to be a very incomplete definition, and I'm not here to make that definition for all of our listeners and viewers, because I am technically one, but I don't go out and practice. So I want to be very careful in what I'm about to say. I'm not looking to ruffle any feathers, but I believe one of the primary roles of a realtor is to really guide their clients through the emotional ups and downs of a transaction, and that if AI can somehow at some point in the future solve for that, which I don't see that, but maybe, who knows? I think then realtors have more of a sort of thing to worry about. But for now, the hardest parts of the transaction are that emotional sort of regulation, that distress
Right.
tolerance, the ability to be there, and be present while news either is in your client's favor or against, and just understanding how to navigate through that as your clients are freaking out, or and that's something that unless AI is at some point able to really understand empathy, compassion, wisdom, experience, and be able to soothe someone, and
Right.
help them stay regulated through a transaction, I think realtors are safe.
I completely agree. Real estate's an emotional transaction. It's not, residential real estate is an emotional transaction. So you hit the nail on the head with the word emotion, because I think even, look at some of the disruptors that have been out there, whether it's Open Door, Purple Bricks, the ones that tried to replace the agent in terms of guiding the consumer into a property and offering up properties and guiding them through the transaction. It didn't work. And it didn't work even during the pandemic when, consumers weren't out shopping for homes. Everyone immediately went back because when we talk about the emotional connection, it's that emotional regulation during the transaction that an agent knows how to navigate, but it's also that consumer emotion when they step into the right property and they get a feeling. So I related, this was, I don't know, 10 years ago. I was in New York City at an Inman conference, and I couldn't sleep. So I turned on the TV, and there was a commercial. It was maybe a precursor to Carvana, where you could order
Sure.
a car online. And I thought, this is wild. If people are ordering cars online, they don't need to actually sit in it and drive it. They'll just order it. We're in trouble, because the next step is, if someone's spending $75,000 on a car online, it's not too long until they're spending 150, 300, $600,000 online buying a house. But we didn't see it happen. It happened in some cases during the pandemic, but I'm not feeling overly threatened. I think it's an opportunity for us to utilize AI to better serve and create that experience for our consumers.
And for anyone that isn't from here in the Chicagoland area, of course, 95% of our listeners aren't, our viewers are not. But for those who aren't familiar with at properties, you're most certainly familiar with Christie's International, just even being an auction house previously, and still being an auction house, but understanding the story of at properties is particularly a strong one because you didn't just come around. You were just mentioning disruptors. You guys were a
Mhm.
disruptor, and you were a disruptor in a way where here in Chicago, one of the largest real estate markets in the country. I don't know when At Properties was founded, but whenever, late '90s or early 2000s, whenever, and what they did is they were an independent brokerage, and they went toe to toe with the big franchise firms and the big large legacy firms, the ones that we all know, and we've had lots of guests on from those firms, and those are
Right.
great firms too. And not only did you guys became I believe the number one independent brokerage in the country very quickly, and you basically grabbed all of the talent that was here in Chicago. They all migrated, not all, but almost all migrated to At Properties because what you guys were building was so unique, so special. And you've continued this dominance here in Chicago ever since. And now you've partnered with Christie's, and you guys are branching out. At Properties meaning is branching out to other markets. Christie's, of course, is always in markets and also branching out. But this was an impressive rise, and you guys were really at the forefront of that disruption.
Yeah, I think, and it's interesting too, because it wasn't, I won't say it wasn't intentional. We always had the intention to grow, and that comes from the two founders, Mike Golden and Thad Wong, and who are super intelligent people. They were the number one and number two agents in Chicago working with another brokerage when they founded App Properties. So that story is super interesting about why they founded App Properties and why they left their previous brokerage, because that's everything that App Properties had been built on, which is, agent first. If you give the agent the best tools, the best resources, the best marketing, you're going to organically attract agents. And then you're also going to be able to provide that higher level of service for your consumer, so that they're also attracted to the brand and attracted to the At Properties agent. And so everything from that point forward, and now since our acquisition of Christie's International Real Estate at the end of 2021, we're doing the same thing for our affiliates there, where we're injecting our tech. Everything that we've done at App Properties to become number one here, we are now injecting into each one of our affiliates around the globe.
I believe I've probably had more At Properties agents on the show than any other brokerage, even including the larger brokerages. So it is it is a really tremendous talent pool that now other agents can participate in. And whether you're here in the Chicago area or somewhere else, there's a lot of really cool things happening with At Properties and Christie's International. But let's talk about sort of brokerages, because I think
Sure.
this is, I don't know, I'm calling this the year of recruiting only because we're seeing a lot of movement here at our company, people going in and out. people leaving the industry to join like a holding company just to sort of say, I'm out
Mhm.
for a while. But people are switching firms. There's lots of team building going on. Teams are obviously actively prospecting for more recruits. So obviously that trend is here. And this is, I think, a year where a lot of agents are just kind of exploring their options. So I'm curious to get your thoughts on if you were an agent or any suggestions you might have to our listeners who are agents about how they might sort of evaluate where they're at and what other avenues they should pursue.
Sure. I think that's a great question, and you're right. It is the time where agents are looking. I would be looking. I would be assessing where I was if I were still, working with clients and actively selling. But I think looking why that's happening, I think it was easy for everyone to be a hero in 2021, right? It was uh, because of the pandemic and because of everything that was happening. It was easy for agents, and some agents don't want to admit it, but the growth that we saw during that year was just wild. And not that agents didn't work hard, but a lot of it was market driven.
Sure.
Well, now that the market is not participating that way, and the market has changed, it's time where agents are looking around to understand, okay, what is my brokerage doing for me? What am I getting for whatever my split is? What am I getting in terms of support and tech and marketing and brand and all of that to make it easy for me to sell as much real estate as possible? So I think that's why agents are taking a moment to look around. I think my I have a series of tips that I give because I think you have to be thoughtful. I joined the wrong brokerage when I got my license. When we were talking earlier in 2007, when I got my license, I joined the wrong brokerage because I didn't ask the right questions. I was promised some things, they weren't delivered, which is why I was
We're
teaching
going to call
myself an
those
active
leads, by the
version.
way. We're just going to answer that he was promised leads and he was not given leads. Because that
It's
is the
funny, I
biggest
was. It
lie
was
in this industry.
You are so right. Whether it's a team leader or a brokerage, offering leads. Um, but for me, it was at the time I realized it. I'd been with another brokerage for about 4 months, 5 months, and I was designing my own postcards on whatever website it was. That website's still around, but it looked like an elementary school child had built it, and it took me 4 hours.
Right.
So that's when I realized, okay, this is not going to help me grow my business.
Mhm.
It's taken me 4 hours to build something that looks like you could have done with crayons and construction paper, and there was no support in doing it. So that's when I started to look around, and I found out properties at the time. And that's what I think is the number one thing for agents is take the time to look around and recognize, sit back, and if you are thinking about making a move, I would first talk with your current brokerage and make sure that you're not missing something there,
Definitely.
right? I would make sure, because think about it, agents, we're busy. Agents are busy. They're out with clients. You miss emails, you miss communications. Your current brokerage might actually be offering what you're looking for. You're just not taking advantage of it. So I think that's the first thing. And then after that, then I would sit back and think about, okay, what brands stick out in your mind? What brand resonates with the consumer you want to work with? And then start interviewing and ask tough questions. Don't be, this is your career, right? So ask tough questions like, how have you helped other agents grow their business? Ask for specific examples. Dig into the details. How does this work? What is the process when I need X? Because we're all salespeople, right, DJ? So it's very easy for whether it's a broker owner or a managing broker to say the right things.
Sure.
They have to show you the right things.
Yeah.
And then you can make an educated apples to apples decision, also based upon cost versus value, which I think is sometimes where we don't make the right decision. I think there's a brokerage for everyone. There will never be one brokerage. There was a brokerage recently that said they would eventually be the only brokerage available. That's not
Good
going to
luck.
happen. Yes.
Yeah.
Consumers want choice, agents want choice. There's always going to be a different offering. So I think though the cost versus value, a lot of times we're attracted to a higher split, but we don't always understand what we get or don't get with that split. So there's the trade-off. So every agent has to make a decision. Okay, am I going to be putting my own signs in the ground, or are they going to be installed for me? And that's a very basic one. It goes much deeper, but examples like that, because I think what we find, and I know you've seen it, DJ, which is agents will make a decision, but they spend more time on admin or installing signs themselves or doing all of these tasks that aren't directly related to business growth.
Yeah, I could not agree more. I think that my suggestion for anyone that is out there to piggyback on what Kevin said, just a little pro tip. If you're talking to a recruiter, somebody like me, for example, I know I'm honest, but you don't know that I'm being honest. So, what I would recommend if you talk to anyone who is a salesperson who's saying, hey, come work for us, we have, all these great tools and features and, everything that you're looking for, great. And then what I would do is I would randomly call three of their agents, people that you respect, that you admire, and that are not referred to you by the person you're talking to because they might stack the deck, right? So this idea of being able to reach out and say, hey, I'm thinking of joining your firm. I had a great conversation with so and I just want to confirm that, this is how it actually works there. And do you think this would be a good fit for me? And usually the agents there, if you call them at random in particular, you know that they haven't, sort of stacked the deck in their favor, but you'll get the truth. If you talk to three people,
Right.
one of them will say, well, this is exactly how it is.
That's very good advice. Talk to the people that are actually utilizing what's there, what the value is, and communicates. If they could talk about their relationship with the managing broker, if they could talk about all these things that typically don't come up when an agent is talking with the managing broker during a recruiting meeting.
Yeah.
But I think when I say there's a brokerage for everybody, I'm not downplaying the brokerages where agents are putting in signs, or maybe it's a higher split for lower service.
Sure.
I think that of course, there are some teams or there are some setups where maybe that team leader does just want to be a team manager, right? And so they have all the pieces in place to make sure that they can take some of that off of their agent's plate. So, but it's a big decision,
It is.
and you don't want to. We all know agents that have hopped around, and that's okay because they're trying to find their place, but you don't really want to be that agent.
No.
Um, you want to of course, everybody wants to make the right decision the first time.
Yeah, and very few agents do. Some agents do because brokerages can change over time. An agent's needs can change over time, and
Right.
and I don't know what the stats are. I'd love to see stats on how many brokerages an agent who does this for 20 years is on. I bet it's at least two. I would guess it'd be somewhere between minimum of one, obviously, up to maybe two or three. Um, Obviously, you don't want to keep switching because that's disorienting to your clients. It's disorienting to you. You're learning new systems. You're adapting and changing all your marketing. And so it's not something that anyone goes into this business going, I can't wait to just jump from brokerage to brokerage. But the cool
Right.
part is you can if you need to and if you want to. And at least here in the Chicagoland area, we have hundreds of options, literally hundreds. And so these
Definitely.
brokerages are all in competition with each other, whether they say it explicitly or not. And so they understand this, and they understand that there, unless you work as an employee, for example, you're a W-2 employee, then yeah, maybe you can't just easily move. You've got obligations to your employer. But if you're an independent contractor, like 99% of realtors are, the power is in your hand. And so you get to sort of go around and talk to other firms and say, hey, I'm over here now, but I'm looking for this. Can you help me? And I think that is a tremendous amount of power that an agent has.
Agreed. It's very easy to move your license, right? But I think that's why you're thinking through it methodical and not making an emotional decision as an agent. If something happens, or if someone is wooing you with a large sum of cash, whatever that incentive might be,
Sure.
is thinking through it carefully, because oftentimes the incentives uh, aren't worth the move, aren't worth whatever they're selling. So,
Yeah, it's interesting. In the last few years, obviously you've seen this as well. Brokerages have been really throwing a lot of money at producing agents to attract them over, and they sign some sort of agreement that maybe it's a 1, 2, 3 year deal, whatever it might be. And a lot of brokerages were just buying up agents recently in the last several years. But these are brokerages that some of them have never been profitable. So it's very interesting to
right.
me. I'm curious what's going to happen when some of those contracts come due, and these agents are now free agents again and can freely move. And all of a sudden, maybe they're not getting the same split that they were promised years before, or there isn't as much cash that they're being bonused. So it's going to be a very interesting model. I know that when you there's a race to the bottom that can happen with brokerages too, where You can literally just go to the
Okay.
brokerage that, like you were saying, that, we're an example of a brokerage that is a high commission, low fee model. And yeah, we don't do all of the services that a firm like At Properties does. And we also don't charge for it. So it makes sense. And we
Right.
have agents that are a better fit here, and they wouldn't likely be a good fit at your firm, and vice versa. And both can
Right.
coexist, and both can coexist peacefully. And it's actually really exciting that there's all these different options for agents. And so, but I want to talk about.
Yeah.
I want to switch gears just for a quick moment and talk about, because this is something that I would love to get your take on, which is leveraging what you call feeder markets. First, let's define
Uh,
what a feeder market is, and then what your take on those are.
Sure. Well, I view a feeder market as when you look at migration, right? And this has been a big term in recent months, especially since the pandemic. And because of the rise, the elevation or increase in property taxes across the US and different states. And then, of course, there's this political, veil that's over everything. So I think when we talk about feeder markets, it's where someone is most likely to come from and where they're most likely to go to. So a good example of a feeder market would be locally the Chicago market to or from Southwest Florida. It seems like the Naples market and Marco Island, Southwest Florida is a huge. Chicago is a huge feeder market for that region, whereas New York might be a feeder market for Miami and the East Coast of Florida.
Yeah.
And so those are I think the definition is where are people most likely to come from, and then the question how do you leverage that? Well, let's go back. How do you identify that? It's really interesting. I'm working with a broker owner named Nick. He's in the Caribbean islands, and he's done an amazing job there with the Christie's International Real Estate brand and bringing together affiliates in the Caribbean. And they've created sort of this conglomerate group, which is really cool because there's a lot of movement between the islands there. The other thing he's done, though, that's really interesting, and what he's taught me is a lot of time feeder markets are driven by direct flight routes. Where if you can find a direct flight route from a specific city to, let's say, Salt Lake City or to Park City or to the mountains in Colorado or somewhere else, that city is likely to be a feeder market for that market.
Sure.
And so we started mapping out direct flight routes because anyone that's buying a second home or a third home or a second residence, even where they're splitting their time, they're more likely to do it if there's a direct flight route.
Yeah, my
And then
my parents,
yeah,
we grew up in Peoria, Illinois, and for some, it's so funny you say that, because it didn't occur to me until recently why they had this. There was an airport in Peoria, there's a direct route to Clearwater, and
sure,
Tampa, Clearwater, which are two different airports, but they do have flights to both. And I went, wonder why Peoria to Tampa? And I was like, oh yeah, because retirees go down there, and my parents are retired down there as well,
yes,
so it makes perfect sense.
yes, and that's I think the Chicago to Southwest Florida too. A
Yeah,
lot of as locals have they bought second homes there or they retire there. So I think the way to leverage it though, this is for agents, right? I think and broker agents. So if you're a broker owner and you're thinking through this, we're doing this. I'm doing a ton of research right now for Christie's International Real Estate when it comes to okay, can we identify the sleeper feeder markets? Because I can name that New York, Miami, the
yeah.
Chicago to Southwest Florida,
Sure.
the LA to Atlanta, all of those. But what are the sleeper ones that we don't know about? And then using digital advertising to be able to market on both sides. So for agents, my recommendation is, obviously work with your brokerage in terms of, if you're a part of something like a network like Christie's International Real Estate, or if you're not and you can't leverage that because you don't necessarily have that, start making connections with agents in those markets and have those referral sources and relationships set up. It's a huge opportunity we often miss. And especially in a market like this, when there are fewer transactions, you want more opportunities. That's one way to stabilize your income or even grow your business through that type of referral business.
It's the most common request when I interview top 1% agents from markets that receive a lot of inbound traffic from other areas, feeder markets. It's the number one request I get from agents I interview who say, when I say, what do you want me to promote? They're like, make sure you tell your listeners that if they have people moving to my area, I would be honored to. And these are top 1% agents.
Yes.
These are busy busy, successful agents, and they see the value in this. So I think you're right. It's making those connections, finding realtors in those areas that you can trade clients back and forth and pass referrals over, and also making sure your clients know that you can still assist them if they're moving to Florida or Georgia or wherever it may be. That you have a network of trusted real estate professionals in those markets, that they don't have to go search or they don't have to ask their friends who already moved there. You can help them, but you have to
Yes.
let them know that. Otherwise, they might not think to call you because you're the local, Chicago guy or whatever city you're in.
Agreed. You could be number one here, but they don't ask you about a different market if they're moving or buying a second home or whatever it might be. So that's a huge tip, is make sure everyone understands you can service them or advise them anywhere. And I also think it's educate yourself on those feeder markets. Educate yourself so you can sound and speak intelligently about Naples, or so you can speak intelligently about the market in Miami. And then the other thing, social media makes it so easy to share content, and LinkedIn has really grown from a platform. Like I've seen more interaction and activity on LinkedIn than ever, and I think there are stats out there that reflect that. But I think that's a great place to be able to share. To your point, DJ, making sure that other people know that you can service and are knowledgeable, and you are a global agent. Let's say you can, through those connections you make, you can share their content, so that you are showing that, okay, you're not just local in Central Illinois or in Chicago or in Southeast Wisconsin. You have the ability to service, and you're knowledgeable about the real estate market as a whole.
Yeah, I think too, as you were talking about the idea of feeder markets, which I'm so glad you brought that topic up. We talk a lot about referrals, but to other markets, but not this idea of sort of being strategic in advance of the client saying, "Oh, I'm moving here. Can you help me find somebody?" Having that information. I was thinking when you mentioned social media, creating content. If it was me, if I had a lot of clients that were nearing retirement age, just as a really simple example, and again,
Mhm.
this is really an obvious example, so it's not necessarily something I'm coming up with uniquely, but it's something that I think you could take advantage of. Anyone listening, is do your research on where people from your market move to. Also, I would look to where places where maybe that are up and coming, like you were saying, emerging feeder markets, emerging places of retirement or second homes, and start putting out content of, hey, are you nearing retirement and thinking about maybe getting a second place or a winter vacation or just moving entirely? Here are some options that you might not know about. And again, that's not necessarily even specifically real estate related, although I mean it is, but it's
Right.
unique content that provides value to people who are in that stage of life.
Absolutely. And one more thing, so continuing on that, is if you know why someone is moving from, let's say, LA to Atlanta, or why somebody is moving, you can actually then speak to the value that your market brings and what you do specifically for clients coming from that market, and offer other areas that might fit. So to your point, the up and comers. I remember we have a company in Atlanta, Ansley. They're the number one luxury real estate company in Atlanta Metro, and I lived down there for a year, working with them and learning and setting them up essentially with all of our resources. And it was great. They have a second home market called Blue Ridge, and it's just north. It's a couple of hours north of Atlanta, and that place, that it is so expensive. The affordability there has gone down because it was, especially during the pandemic, driven up by second home buyers. Well, there are plenty of other similar lakes and areas around Atlanta that someone moving might not understand or know about. So if you're truly familiar with your market and the opportunities that are there, and those, I guess, the up and coming markets, you can offer more and attract those movers or migrants to your community.
Yeah, I could not agree more. This is such a great conversation, as we're seeing a lot of the baby boomers are retiring, if not already retired. They are moving. This is a huge percentage of our United States population. So we have a real opportunity here to. I mean, financial advisors have known about this for years and years. Going, there's all this trillions of retirement dollars are going to be flooding the financial advisory space, and financial advisors have been trying to gobble up their percentage of market share. This is a great time to do the same thing for real estate. Is really understanding who your clients are, or even maybe you don't have a lot of
Right.
clients who, for example, if you want to focus on retirees, that are retiring. But what you can do is learn about that, and you can go interview other agents and talk to them. And it's been my experience, and I've had so many at properties agents on the show. Carrie McCormick comes on every single month since almost the beginning to talk about.
Right.
But it's been my experience, like people like Carrie and everyone else basically who's ever been on our show, is so incredibly generous with their time, with their thought. Not every realtor is going to have time to chat with you, but if you reach out, you'd be shocked at how few, how infrequently top producers actually get asked by younger producers. Maybe they're intimidated, they're afraid, they feel like, oh, I don't want to bother so and so. This whole show has been about bothering, since we started it 6 years ago, it's been about bothering top producers and saying, would you please come
Yes.
on and tell our agents what you do? By the way, we're not paying you, so can you please come on and do it for free and take an hour out of your day? And you know what? I think we've only had maybe 2 or 3 no's in 6 years. People,
Wow.
realtors tend to be very, especially really successful realtors. They understand the cooperative nature of this business. They understand that being of service, giving, having a little bit of that servant's heart kind of mentality really, it sort of lights them up. So this is a great opportunity this year too, to like going all the way back to the beginning of the conversation, is look at the realtors in your market that you truly admire, whether you want to work
Yes.
at their firm or just learn from them, and take them to lunch, take them out for coffee, see if you can get 15 minutes with them, and you'd be shocked at the lessons you'd learn.
Agreed. And locally, there's an agent named Tommy, and there's an agent who's a real legend in Chicago real estate named Millie. And I remember Tommy telling a story when he first got into the business, inviting out Millie for lunch, and he was nervous because he was new and she was this, huge producer. She met him. They went out for lunch, and they've been friends ever since. And that was a long time ago. And I think it's true. Why do you get into real estate? Why do agents that end up being successful get into real estate? It's service. It's what you said, DJ. It's so whether it's service with our colleagues and helping and mentor from that way, or servicing our clients, it all comes from the same perspective and mindset.
Yeah, we're so lucky that we all sort of work, well, not all of us, but most of us work independently or maybe on a small team or a large team, but we're basically doing our own thing within that team, or maybe it's just us independently. And we have the opportunity to see what everyone else is doing independently as well, and take little
Right.
bits and pieces from, obviously not taking someone else's content or someone's exact idea, but understanding how that can influence or inspire you to do more things. And there was a woman who had been sending me. I got on her mailing list. She's a realtor. I'll mention her name because she's such a lovely person, Nicole Hajdu with Dreamtown. And what she did for years before I reached out to her, is she would send an email on Wednesday of every week. This is such a brilliant thing. It's so simple, but it's brilliant. And it said, here's the fun things to do in Chicago this weekend. And it would have like 5 or 6 ideas. And I was like, that's brilliant. It had nothing to do with real estate. She never once mentioned the word
Right.
real estate, but she still does this to this day. And I went, that's brilliant, because this is so much value to anyone who around Thursday or Friday go, oh shoot, I got to come up with something to do this weekend. And so I called her just out of the blue. She doesn't know me. I don't know her. I just called her. She picked up the phone, and I'm like, I just got to tell you, like, you don't know me. She's like, no, actually, I do know you. I listen to your show or whatever. But I said, you don't know me, but I am so impressed by this. And then she and I have become fast friends. And it's one of those things that
It's
a
cool.
lot of times these people do these really cool marketing things, or branding things, and they get a lot of great results. But if it's inspiring you, reach out to them and say, like, how'd you do that? Like, how did you think to do that? You'll get so many great ideas, because you don't have to, like you were
Right.
saying, you don't have to build the postcard anymore. Exclusively on your own, and now we have tools to
Yes.
help with that, and Canva can kind of do it for you, and some AI stuff can do it for you as well. But I would talk to the agents who have the best looking marketing materials already, and just say, how did you do that? And did your firm help you with that? Did you do it? Did you have a lender help? There's lots of little tips and tricks that aren't really accessible, but if you reach out to people, they will tell you.
Absolutely. I think that's part of the real estate community. I think if I can go on a marketing soapbox for a second, if that's okay. I think you're talking about content. You're talking about something that very early on Nicole was doing, and I saw a lot of that from Dreamtown, where they had the top 5 things to do in Chicago or whatever.
Yeah.
What From a content perspective, we have, as an agent, you have to be different, right? Because I think one of the things that I've really been talking about, and at App Properties we've been talking about, is you can't do the same thing that every other agent is doing. You can't, otherwise you appear to be a commodity when it comes to the service side. But from a marketing standpoint, it's not that attention spans have gotten shorter. Maybe they have, but that's not the point. The point is now we are being overstimulated by so many things that everything is trying to get our attention. And there's some wild stat out there about how many ads or product placements we see in any given day. It's astronomical. So you need to make sure that when people see your stuff, they stop. When they're scrolling through your social media, they stop. And when we talk about just listed and just solds, those have a place, right? Whether it's a postcard or on social media or wherever it might be, digital ads, they have a place. But if someone's not actively buying or selling, and that
Yeah,
property is not a
nobody cares.
no, if it's not a $100 million aspirational property that people want to scroll through, they're not stopping, right?
Right.
So I think I just want to encourage agents, think about what else your clients are interested in. And we talk about this at Christie's International Real Estate. I know if I have a high net worth individual, likely they're into art, automobiles, wine, something, Birkin bags, whatever it might be. They're into these things. So I can now use content that they're interested in that's not real estate related, which is a term or a phrase you used earlier.
Yeah, boy, I could not agree with you more. This idea of being different and just understanding what your audience wants. If your audience wants to see your success over and over and over and over again, then by all means, post exclusively just listed, just sold. I don't really think that's what anybody wants to see exclusively,
Right.
but I understand, and you said it has its place. It's a good thing. You should definitely celebrate your accomplishments, and it's you should be proud of that. That's great. And that's not really content for your audience. That's more of a little showing off a little trophy, and that's fine. But then it's also like, okay, also I want to create a lot of content that people go, hey, I need that. I need that content right now. I need to know how, tips on how to get my home ready to sell. Or I'm in between buying and selling homes, so I do just want to know what's going on socially this weekend in my area, or whatever the content may be. The good news is it could be about anything as long as it's applicable to your audience.
That's right. That's it. So thinking outside the box, I think doing the same thing, if it doesn't make you stop scrolling, then don't post
Right.
it. If it's not something that you would click like or engage with and comment on, don't post it. Come up with something different. Think a little bit harder.
Yeah, come up with something different, because when I first got into this industry about 11 or 12 years ago, and I still see it every so often, but there was that phrase that everybody put at the bottom of their email that said, and I know where it comes from, and it comes from a very good place, a good source. So I'm not poking fun at the source, but because it's a legitimately great source. But I think so many people adopted this exact thing, where at the bottom line of their email they said, "I'm never too busy for your referrals." It's like, who cares? Like, of course you're not too busy for anybody's referrals like that. But when it becomes, and the first person who did it, okay, great, and now the 100th person who does it in your local market, everybody was buying websites that was like DJ sells chicagorealestate.com. That was another big fad. And I'm not saying, I'm not putting those fads down. I do understand that there's a place for that. It's cute. And I'm not totally, I don't want to put anyone off, but I think you could be a little bit more creative and do something just a little bit more unique and have more impact, and certainly get more attention.
Absolutely. And this ties across everything. I think you have to do something different. If a lot of times, again, it's not, especially with top producers sometimes, which is they've got a great business. They've been growing. They've got their income is solid. They're not necessarily concerned. The problem is if they don't innovate or try something new and do something different from what their competitors are doing, their business will not continue to grow and it will shrink. So I think the idea is you have to differentiate yourself, whether it's with a physical listing presentation, whether it's with a branding book, whether it's with digital advertising that catches eyes. You have to be different. Otherwise, like I said, people are going to miss we become a commodity. We could become an industry that posts just sold, where there's just these cookie cutter homes that we're scrolling through on Instagram. That doesn't really do anything for the individual agent's brand.
Here's a little tip. I want to get your opinion. A little suggestion I might have, instead of just doing a just listed, just sold. Which, by the way, again, we're not saying don't do that. That's
Sure.
still, you should be celebrating your accomplishments. And What I think would be really fun is when you do a just listed or just sold or just went under contract or whatever the announcement might be, is also do a little video, go into the home and show a couple of
Yes.
cool things that are in the home. That is way more engaging than just, hey, I just sold this $1 million home. If you sell $1 million home, I want to see the inside of this home. Show me something cool. And by the way, if it's a $200,000 home, $150,000 home, there's still something cool in that home.
Yes.
There's something unique and there's a story to tell, even if it's a 30-second story. Go in with your camera and say, you're not going to believe what's inside this home. This is so cool. And, or here's the best feature of what this
Mhm.
property I just sold. That's the kind of stuff that people go, okay, cool. We like to see things like that.
That's absolutely right. The word you used was story. We have to be better storytellers. Whether it's like what you're saying is, how can we tell a story about the experience we created for our buyer or our seller? Tell the story that highlights that consumer and how you made their transaction as seamless as possible. You did something that is unheard of. And it doesn't mean like 2021, everyone's posting about how their average sales price to list price ratio was 101%. Yes, everybody's was 101%,
Yes.
right? So that's not unique. But if you have a story to tell about a way that transaction went, and if you also have a story to help guide clients now, I think storytelling is an art we have to continue to master as agents, because whether it's helping and supporting and advising a client in how to price their home now as the market is changing, using cautionary tales, using success stories, you have to use these stories because people relate to them. And so if you can do that with your successes, to exactly what you're saying, DJ, instead of a just sold, hey, I sold this, it's more about telling a story. How was this a unique experience? Or to your point, story about the home. Talk a
Yeah.
little bit about the
Well,
history of the home, or what that unique aspect of the home that they won't see elsewhere.
and you could also talk too, I think, about the challenges that clients face throughout the buying and selling process. And I think telling those stories is incredibly valuable because then that homeowner who might be in the middle of that process of buying or selling and they hit a roadblock and it seems bleak and they're depressed or they're angry.
Yeah.
Stories like this can help soothe the afflicted customer because you can say, "Hey, I've been through this before." And this could be a one-to-one conversation. This could be a social media conversation. But this is something that people need to feel that they're not alone. And this is an opportunity for people to feel like, okay, other people go through this. I will be okay. So it's such a great suggestion. And this is I think a great place because we covered a lot of ground here. I think it's a great place to bring this episode to an end. And I just want to sort of go over a couple of the things we talked about today as a recap because we did cover a lot. First, obviously we talked about Kevin and his rise through At Properties and now Christie's International. We should also mention, by the way, but before I conclude all of this, that Christie's and At Properties are always looking for quality agents who are thinking that they need more from their brokerage. And this is a great opportunity. 2023, this is the year people are exploring. They would love the opportunity to see if they might be a good match for your needs as an agent. So I know you guys aren't in every single market in the country, but you're in a lot of them. And so if you have the itch to want to see what other options exist, just go to atproperties.com. Also visit christiesrealestate.com. We'll have links to those in the show notes. See if they have local offices. By the way, they're expanding too. So they are opening offices everywhere. And I'm telling you, At Properties came to Chicago against all odds and basically rose to number one very quickly under the tutelage of, as you mentioned, two very, very intelligent, great guys, but did it. And they have a lot of knowledge, and that's just a great company. So could not, and Christie's, the brand Christie's, of course, is so well regarded. It's a white glove brand, and it is just an awesome company. So I'm the biggest At Properties fan out there, even though I don't work there. But I am a huge fan. So if anyone out there is exploring, please check out At Properties. So we talked about what it's like to maybe switch brokerages, what questions you gave some great suggestions on how to explore other options. And we also talked about leveraging these feeder markets, this idea of how do
Mhm.
we think beyond our current transaction? Where are some trends that maybe are happening in the future? How can I start, creating strategies to make connections with agents in other markets? How can I, start to really develop that additional sort of revenue stream by finding out, where my clients are going and where they're coming in from, and developing relationships so you can have that two-way interaction, and get those phone calls once in a while. It's like, hey, I'm a broker down in Florida. My client's moving to Chicago, or vice versa. That is a really, really powerful connection to have. So I've had agents on the show, by the way, that literally fly to other markets just to meet with agents, to really say, I am so serious about sending clients your way that I want to make sure that you're the right person. So if that's another, if you really want to step it up, that's a great opportunity. If you're sending a lot of people to a market, I'd be visiting that market as often as possible, and making my presence there known, to make sure that you've got great partners there. So anyway, this is a great opportunity to really explore your brokerage this year, to explore some of these feeder markets, also to understand that AI is not yet taking over, and hopefully won't take over. We won't become slaves to the AI machine, but who knows? I guess we'll find. I'll find out together. But in the meantime, your jobs are safe, because the one thing AI can't quite yet do, and hopefully never can, is handle our emotions, and really give us guidance that is based on not just facts, and understanding, sort of the intricacies and the subtleties of life that are the black and white. So for everyone out there, please go visit atproperties.com, also christiesrealestate.com. Links to those in the show notes. Kevin, I'm such a fan of yours. I'm so grateful that you took time out. I know how busy you are. So on behalf of our audience, we appreciate you. While we were doing this, we had the highest number of people ever watching us. I was telling Kevin ahead of time, I go, don't worry, we're recording this live, we'll broadcast it live. No one's going to watch it. And there was like 30 people watching, which is incredible. So this is because of Kevin, not because of me. So this is how respected this man is. Kevin's a great guy. He's a real leader in this industry, and what he says is always a great idea to pay attention to, because he just knows a lot. So we're grateful on behalf of our audience. Thank you, Kevin, and on behalf of Kevin and myself, we want to thank our audience for sticking around to the very end. We love you. We honor you. We're so grateful. We do this for you, and please support our sponsors. Please support Kevin. Check out At Properties and Christie's International, and we will see everybody on the next episode. Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you so much, DJ. It was an honor to be here.